Go. All right. Good evening, Dr. Oyelade. Good evening, viewers. Thank you for joining me for week 4 of our Can You Fix Nigeria challenge. This week, I have with me Dr. Olutoyin Oyelade, who is the chief exec at Fiscal Corporation Canada and president at CASA Foundation. She was also former group treasurer at Intercontinental Bank PLC in Nigeria. Dr. Oyelade, you're welcome to the discussion tonight.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. You've seen a bit of Colby Foundation, we're hosting a few shows, this road talk, more or less. And in this road talk, we've set ourselves a 30-week challenge to talk about the challenges which are facing Nigeria and how we can address some of these things. Some of the things we just want you to help us look at it from a financial perspective and give us some sort of background and some education on how things work in Nigeria. My first question to you tonight is going to be to help us with the differentiation of the roles of the Ministry of Finance from the Central Bank and the Debt Management Office, as well as any other key player in that financial sector as you deem free. Please, can you elaborate on this? What are the different roles that these people play?
Okay. The central bank. Let's start with the central bank.
Okay.
The central bank is a regulatory arm of the government, and it works, specifically to implement the monetary policies initiated at by the executive arm of government. And so the central bank plays that holistic role of having that overview of the market, of the economy generally, understanding the clear monetary policies that have been put in place by the federal government of any country. Of course, that's Nigeria, is the case study here. And regulating the executive arm, which is the Minister of Finance's office, budget, national planning, as it is constituted right now, is that's the executor, the executioner, or the executor as it were. And so the monetary policies as initiated, as mandated by the federal government of the Republic of Nigeria, for instance, that will actually be executed step by step by the Minister of Finance and the Office of the Ministry of Finance.
Okay.
The Central Bank of Nigeria, for instance, will then be the regulatory authority over all that is being executed. Regulator in terms of, so for instance, the monetary policies, the tools, in any policy, you have tools of engagement to ensure that execution flows easily. And so these monetary policies will, the main tools will be, discount rates, open market operations, discount window, and so on. These are various tools, liquidity ratios, various tools that are put in place by any country. It's general. It's general in any country. It's not just Nigeria. Nigeria just happens to be a case study here.
Okay.
And so the Central Bank of Nigeria then has that regulatory role of ensuring that the monetary policies and the fiscal policies are duly regulated and everything aligns based on the mandate that the Minister of Finance's office has received.
Given. Thank you very much. One thing I wanted to, you touched on quite a few things there. So you talked about the tools. You mentioned the issue of the fiscal and the monetary policies. Now, some of our listeners, people watching these videos, are not familiar with some of these things. So I will appreciate if you could help me break it down. What is the difference between a fiscal policy and a monetary policy? You see, if you could help us shed a little more light on that. And then secondly, help us talk about these tools that you mentioned. You talked about bank rate. Why are these things important? Why are they important to us?
Okay. The fiscal policy, generally, the fiscal policy would generally refer to, the spendings of the government, the control of spendings, the taxes, tax and spending policies of any government, of any nation.
Okay.
So for instance, you have the tax rates, you have government, tax rates, customs and excise and things like that. That's what we mean. How is it initiated? How is it actually, how do they come to a conclusion about what taxes we should pay? Generally,
Okay.
just breaking it down. I just want to give you a definition that is theoretical. I want your audience to, I want it to resonate.
What, yes, okay, good.
Exactly what. So how do they come to an understanding or to, that figure, that number, that, the tax rate for workers, salaried workers should be this amount and so on. How is it monitored? So you have different arms of government that monitor all of this, the FIRS, talking about Nigeria, for instance.
Correct.
And so you would have all of those ones, ensuring that it is paid. You will have them ruling out, making rules and to ensure monitoring measures and so on, to make sure that people are rallied around the table from, organization to organization at state level, at subnational level, to ensure that this is done. However, that rule comes, as part of the fiscal policy of any nation, because the spending of government is derived from the taxes that the government
makes.
Yeah, so that's why it's important that custom and excise duties on goods shipping, what happens in the borders and so on. That's why it's important that the rules are set ab initio so that everybody complies. So if you're bringing, different rules, for different countries, if you're bringing in goods, how do you ensure that you tax or you pay some duties or some customs and duties and so on are paid on these goods. So generally speaking, that's exactly the fiscal side of things. And this fiscal side of things and the taxes and so on is what actually helps the government make projections. So when they're talking about budgeting, national planning and things like that, that's when the federal government now begins to make projections as to what is going to spend, how is it going to spend, what amounts does it have available, and things like that. You're talking about the fiscal policy also. You're talking about the benchmark. So what are your commodities saying? So particularly in a country like Nigeria that is oil dependent, oil reliant. And so that Nigeria is a country, of course, amongst many other countries, that, has that main commodity that it relies on. And it needs to set a price, a benchmark. A benchmark. So for the oil, so that the revenues of Nigeria as a country will be derived from that benchmark. Projections will be made based on the benchmark. That's why people keep talking about the benchmark of crude for each season. And once you find any disparity, based on the international market, it's falling, rapidly. Then you find people panicking. Because of the main commodity of a country like Nigeria. So the spendings of Nigeria is derived from the fiscal policies it makes. However, on the monetary side, you have the interest rates, you have the foreign exchange, and so on. This is why this is actually within the purview of the central bank of any country. Of course, Nigeria is a case study here, but it is always regulated by the central bank or the bank of whichever country it is. How do you set your interest rates? How do you set your, of course, that the exchange rate moves in line with the market, what's going on, what obtains in the market. So there could be disparities here, particularly when there's a creation of what you call a black market or another market outside of the central bank. But all of this is managed by the central bank of any nation.
Thank you very much for that clarification. So I personally, this is also very educational for me. So what you're saying there then is that the fiscal policy is mainly run by, say, a federal ministry of finance, whereas the monetary policy is mainly run by the CBN. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. There will be a check and a balance on one another because they work in sync. So you would realize that the office of the central banker, whoever is the central banker, for instance, in Nigeria, I know that the Central Bank of Nigeria reports to the Ministry of Finance.
Okay.
It might not be so in other countries based on the the structure of the government. It's a presidential system of government. And so you have the central banker reporting to
the ministry. Oh, I didn't know that was still the case. I knew that.
Yeah, well, they work together in sync. He reports to the president. However, it's it's like a check, it's like
a check and balance.
a
Okay,
check
I
and
see.
balance system, right, as it were. One, because they need to work together closely, because they work together closely because of implementation of some of these policies. Remember when I talked about the tools that are usually engaged to ensure that these policies are executed seamlessly expected in the market, through the open market operations, through the discount window, through interest rates. So for instance, remember we talked about the spendings of the federal government being dependent on the policies, whether fiscal or monetary. So federal government is running short, maybe it's recording huge deficits in some areas of its operations. Then the open market operations kicks in. So the open market operations kicks in when they begin to sell treasury bills. That's where you have all the open market operations, just talking about instruments, treasury bills, bonds,
let me
government
ask you a
bonds.
question here, because I have to be honest, this is the one that really intrigues me. Yeah?
Okay.
All right. So, you go to places everywhere around the world, whether you're in the US, Canada, UK, whatever, interest rates are 2%, 3%, In Nigeria, I can't remember as long as, I can't recall our interest rate ever been less than 10%. It's never gone lower than 10%, as far as I can remember. Why is it that our interest rate is so high, and what are the implications of that on us as an economy?
Well, I think, I mean, just to quickly clarify that, I think as we speak right now, interest rate is single digit, but I'm talking about, I'm talking about the deposit side.
Yes.
So when you're collecting people's money, it's single digit right now. It used to actually be double digit, way back early 2000s, the 12s, the 13s, and so on. But
Dr. Oyelade, I'm talking about interest rates, though. I'm talking about.
You mean on loans?
On loans, yes.
Oh, yes. On loans, okay. Yeah, because interest rate, there's the part on monies received. So I was talking about that.
I'm talking about loans, yes.
No, it costs an arm and a leg, actually.
Yes, but why is that so? Why is that so?
I think it's the cost of operations. I mean, having worked extensively for a long period of time in the banking sector myself, I realized that the cost of doing business, the cost of operations is actually huge. Particularly when you have, of course, as every other country does have, when you have regulatory requirements that you need to meet on a monthly basis. So you have what you call the liquidity ratios, ratios to ensure that a bank keeps liquid. That's actually a huge percentage. I think Nigeria must have, some high percentage of that liquidity ratio. And you have all the regulatory requirements that you need to meet generally. And you need to keep this through all cycles, or every period. It's not just that you're keeping it for 1 week or 2 weeks. It's actually that it just must be there, all invested. Of course, some part invested in treasury bills, maybe about 10, 20%. Some parts invested in treasury bills and bonds. Some parts actually just,
sitting as capital.
Sitting at capital with the Central Bank of Nigeria. So when you realize that you collect so much money and you need to deposit it, sometimes at next to nothing, maybe 2%, for instance, at the Central Bank of Nigeria, then you realize that you want to go out and really make money effectively. And in Nigeria, it's the big bucks that plays. Of course, everywhere it is, you want to play with the big boys. And so the major challenge with that is that a lot of the banks are more aggressive in charges. So, and at the end of the day, there is no major regulation that really prevents you from charging the rate that at which you do business. It could actually be, there's no, it's benchmarked against the prime lending rate, so you have what you call the prime lending rate, the overnight rate, and so on.
What is our prime lending rate? When you were in the banking sector, what was our prime lending rate?
If I do recall, maybe 7, 8, thereabouts.
Yeah.
So it was single digit, but
Okay.
there's a way to calculate that. Of course, I wasn't in that area, but there's what you call the transfer pricing, because by the time you collect money from yourself, Adekunle, counterparts, various people, and then you want to transfer the funds to another unit of the organization that has a responsibility to generate and create incomes from such money, then there are other antecedent costs that need to be added. The cost of liquidity, the cost of keeping the money, the cost of staffing, and so on will now be added to that. Now, the question is, do other institutions add the same cost? Obviously, yes.
Yes.
However, the climb is different. When you add all of this cost together, there's no way it dovetails, it results into a double digit immediately, because the cost of maintaining the liquidity ratio on a monthly basis is quite huge, particularly for most of the banks that are bullish in the market, very aggressive, and they are not known to be real commercial banks. The real commercial banks are those ones that generate a lot of checking accounts, savings accounts, and so on. And as you remember, most of those accounts will be next to nothing at 2%, 3% thereabouts. But if a bank actually focuses largely on collecting fixed deposits, which will be at 12, 13, 14%, by the time you add the other costs of keep making regulatory requirements, there's no way you won't lend at double digits.
Well, okay, so there are two follow-up questions for me that I have for you here, Doug. Okay, so the first thing is this, right? You mentioned that liquidity ratio, and I remember from basic accounting they taught us, or commercial, it's a fairly high ratio for cities. I mean, about 40% or something high. So I remember that. It used to be very high. But my worry is this: because our lending rates are so high, we're not able to support our SMEs and our industries and our manufacturing sector. So the long-term impact on the economy is humongous. Why can't we as a country address that? Because like you're rightly saying, I mean, there's no business that you're going to do anyway, that you're going to make 20, 30% profit. If the bank is giving you 20% as a loan, it's a non-starter for businesses. So what can we do to address this problem?
Well, I do know. Well, I'm not in Nigeria right now. I'm not working in Nigeria right now.
No, you're not.
So I think I can actually cite a few examples from this part of this world.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
So I believe that the SMEs, from my experience here, because I run one myself, I run a couple of social enterprises out here. Okay. I believe that from my experience, understanding that the SMEs, the small and medium enterprises, the SMEs, are the engine of any nation. The way they're taking from my part of the world here, where I speak from today, is that they are the life and wire of any nation. Correct. And I think that until we come to that conclusion, we will keep dancing between single digits, double digits, triple digits, if it's possible, because by the time you add some of the fees, even to the double digit you're talking about, it becomes triple digit. Well, I mean, if you work it out on a month-on-month basis, it may not be that bad, but it will be so very close to that. So until you take the SMEs as a life wire of the country, it possibly may not have this total shift towards helping the small businesses grow exponentially to such an extent that the SMEs actually become the life and wire of countries within West Africa, and to a large extent, even some of those ones in the Eastern African zone, the regions. I know that, of course, a lot of countries within the East African region, from Rwanda to Tanzania, Uganda. I mean, you have where you have the Silicon Savannah. You have a lot going on in those areas. Nigeria and West African countries need to get to that point where they begin to see the SMEs as the life wire of the country. Why am I saying so? Coming back to here, you have, as I speak today, I believe 756,000 small businesses have been able to access the small business loan, which is actually
756,000 businesses. Oh, wow.
Small business loans in Canada. Small business loans, 40,000, 0%, 25% forgivable. That's as
Wow.
we speak. 40,000, 0%, 25% forgivable. If you pay,
Forgivable as well.
yes, if you pay as of a certain date, which is actually specifically December 31st, 2022. So they allow you to use that, and that's in view of the pandemic. But I'm just saying that's how seriously the issue is taken, because small businesses will actually constitute about 42% of this economy. And they believe that businesses that constitute 42% of the economy employ more than 35%, and they're too significant to be ignored. Yeah. So they're the ones that are called too, so while you have too big to fail, they are actually the ones that are too big to fail. Of course, you know what I mean. We have a lot of big businesses that are too big to fail and so on. But the small businesses are, they are so critical that, and they believe that they're actually pivotal to the growth of the economy, and whatever it takes, they must be supported. I believe that Nigeria will need to we need to draw a lead from that.
Quick question. I think the point you make there is very clear. Government needs to be able to support our SMEs because they are the biggest supporters of our workers to get them to work. My question though is, when you just gave the example in Canada, 756,000 businesses accessing loans.
Yeah.
How can we make that work in West Africa? For example, how does Canada repay that amount of money? And what lessons can we take from them to implement in places like Africa or in West Africa?
They're still coming back. It's still the fiscal policy we talked about earlier. So the government, from the taxes and so on, so they make their projections. They know they're going to spend this much each year. And so the policies rally around whatever the spending will be, and the projection is made based on that. However, of course, this is a different era. It's a pandemic. No contingency planning could have planned or prepared any government for this. We've never had it. I mean, we've never had this before, right? But I think at the end of the day, this is actually also what makes, I'm sure you've heard when you say, it's sovereign. You have the subnational, which is at the state level. It's a sovereign. So this is what that actually means. That the central bank of any nation is the lender of last resort.
Correct.
Meaning that the reason that it is the lender of last resort means that it can actually, pull money out, and then it's part of the fiscal monetary policies, the adjustments will be made.
Lubricate the economy, basically.
To lubricate so they will push money out, oil the engine of the economy. However, like I said, it's not just free for all money. The money is expected to be paid back. Only 25% of it, you're recalling what I mentioned here, will be paid. 25% is forgivable. However, the structure, to my mind, which I expect will be put in place, is that the taxes you pay in the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years will cover up for the deficit you are seeing today. So now, I'm sure on one side of the balance sheet, I'm not a central banker, so I'm not, but I believe, and I'm not an economist, but my understanding of the way the balance sheet works is that if you create a deficit on one side of the balance sheet, through the years, at some point, through your taxes, the fiscal policies, the monetary policies, and so on, you will make up for the deficit that has been created. Maybe I should have read a bit on this, and then I would have spoken to you as an economist. But this is, to my mind, what would happen. I know for sure. Yeah, I know for sure that the kind of taxes we pay around here makes it so, it actually, you would say that, it's a given. It necessitates their availing loans to all small businesses. But it's not automatic, because I know several other countries that have not actually made these types of facilities available to all small businesses. I'm saying that there are small businesses that do not, possibly might not even qualify. However, because of the numbers that they're trying to maintain and to ensure that palliatives reach as many families as possible, they make it available because they're expected to submit, some documents and so on, just like a fallback to ensure that the money reaches the hands of as many families as possible, because they believe that through the small businesses, monies will be spread, round.
Around. Okay, Doc.
But can I quickly say
yes,
that
please.
I believe Nigeria is actually doing something about this. So to be fair, we have a lot of catching up to do in Nigeria. But I do believe, if I remember, I believe that I heard from some of the statements and speeches made in recent times by the Federal Ministry of Finance
Okay.
that some palliatives are in the offing. It's been, arranged for
Okay.
small businesses, I think for youth groups, if I remember, maybe
As
some
well.
youth fund coming up, as I remember. And there's something for small businesses, but maybe about, I'm not sure, maybe 500,000 or 250,000.
Okay.
But we're yet to see it. And, because the pandemic is already in its 8th, 9th month of staying at home. So maybe that's why it's becoming really obvious that there's a huge gap in that regard.
Gap.
There's a huge gap, so maybe there's been some delay in execution and so on, but I know that something has been announced.
Okay. Let me switch to something slightly different at the end in a minute. When we were growing up, when we were younger,
Yes.
There used to be things like industrial development banks, NIDB. There was the Nigerian Agric Bank. I remember as a kid growing up in Ado-Ekiti in Akure in Nigeria, there used to be what they call the Bank of Agric Credit. There was an Agric Credit Bank, right? Did you? So now
I remember.
You remember that? Yes. Now all of those things are gone. Agric Credit Bank, Industrial Development Bank, Nigeria Cooperative Bank, Nigeria Bank of Agriculture and Commercial Development. All those developmental banks are gone. Now, is there a place, and like you rightly said, one of the major problems that we face is that our banks are rated are very high for maybe genuine reasons, but this kind of banks were in the times past able to get low cost loans to SMEs, to people who were creating jobs, people who were investing on a small scale business. We had the People's Bank at some point. We also had the community banks under the Babangida era. What can we do to get loans to people? This is my first question. All right. What can we do to get loans to people in an easy way? One. And two, is there a place for those kind of banks even today? They were very common in the 80s, but we don't have them now. Why did they go away, and can we reintroduce them? I think these are the two last questions, and then we'll go into the general discussions. Please go ahead, Doctor.
Okay. Yeah, I must quickly confess that I'm not sure what the state of those development banks are in Nigeria, but for sure, I know that there is Bank of Industry.
Okay, BOI.
There's a bank, BOI. There is Bank of Industry in Nigeria, and I believe there is a new one called the Development Bank of Nigeria. I'm not sure if it's absolutely new, but up until 2011 and so on, I didn't know about Development Bank of Nigeria. But there's a Development Bank of Nigeria, and there's Bank of Industry that I'm very familiar with, and they are banks that focus. As the name depicts, Bank of Industry, focusing on industrial development and so on. The only issue is in a country as wide as Nigeria, with a huge landmass, geographical, and all of that, and with a 220 million population,
people.
I'm not sure how well, how effective
those banks are
being. And Bank of Industry has been there for quite a bit. They've been there. I wasn't going to say forever, but even while I was in the banking industry in Nigeria, they were very prominent. Development Bank of Nigeria also focuses on micro, small and medium-sized businesses too. And I understand that it has huge, almost $1 billion or over $1 billion in dollars to avail. The issue that I see with all of these agencies, because these are also most of the ones that work with the federal government or with government in any clime are meant to be agencies of government to actually distribute, maybe not distribute, to avail facilities to make loans, small business loans available to qualifying candidates so that they can continue to do business and generate and create wealth, generally speaking, create revenue, create wealth, create employment and jobs. But this is actually the role of these banks to avail facilities to develop SMEs, medium-sized, medium-sized enterprises, to create startups, to support them, to ensure that jobs are created and facilitated. So this is the role. The question is this role being performed? I'm not sure, because I'm not sure how many groups have been able to access these facilities.
Correct.
From these windows of opportunity. So there are a lot of pockets and pockets of agencies of government, even if we're not sure of where NARCB, what has become of, that's the Agric one you talked about.
Yeah, the
I'm not really
Agric Bank, yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the current status is, and I'm not sure if there's a replacement for it in the banking industry in Nigeria. But what I do know is that there are several others, and there are agencies of government that create windows of opportunities for SMEs to draw from. So they go in, make applications and so on. However, when the major constraints I see is that it cannot cost you an arm and a leg to access facilities from such windows of opportunities from agencies of government. It's usually, they usually support. And so usually the rates will be heavily discounted,
reduced,
and things like that. Because you understand that they are startups, they really don't have the capacity to carry themselves. And so usually the way it's structured and I believe it's the same in Nigeria, the way it's structured is such that people go in with the right application and so on, and then you access this facility. Okay. Usually the rates will be single digit. Okay. Usually the rates will be single digit, and usually the requirements to access these loans will be much reduced than that which is required from regular, well-established businesses that have already been in the game for a bit.
For a while.
For a bit. You see, there are major problems with this access. It can't cost you an arm and a leg. I keep talking about arm and a leg. Then it defeats the whole purpose. It defeats the whole purpose because you can't clap alone. What is happening is that, generally speaking, in the financial sector, it's almost like clapping alone, where you have the big players, and then the medium-sized players are almost non-existent.
Correct.
They're almost non-existent because even when they try to bring their head out to do the business, the conditions are not favorable. The terms of the facilities are not favorable. The conditions are not favorable. The business environment itself, not favorable. So it is very difficult actually to cut your cheese and make a clean cut in Nigeria. I hope you understand. Yeah. So
I understand what you mean.
That's almost like clapping alone, and you can't clap with one hand.
Yeah,
because even the big businesses that you see today, they need the support of the medium size, for
I lost you there.
Distribution for monies to reach for facilities to reach other people. Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
okay.
I can. Please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So I said you can't clap alone. I'm not sure where you lost me, but I'm just saying the big businesses are clapping, as it were, and it would seem like most of the ventures and most of the sectors appear to be shifting into the hands of big players in the market, which is good if you have the competencies and the skills required to deliver. However, the small players, also the medium-sized players, must also be brought into the fray because there's a place for each one, and they also have a wider network and reach. So the medium-sized players in their locations will be very useful to the big players.
Thank you, Father. Thank you, Doc, for that clarification. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm going to ask you one question. Okay. Yeah? Let me put you on the spot.
Let's see.
If you were nominated Minister of Finance in Nigeria today, and that's why I say I'm going to put you on the spot, what is one thing that you think you will do, right, to facilitate getting monies to SMEs, or what will be the single thing that you will deal with in our financial sector? One thing. What do you think is the most critical thing that whoever is in that position to make the call, what do they need to fix in our financial institutions? This is my final question for the night. Yes, I was going to put you on the spot.
You just put me on the spot there because I think the current Minister of Finance is actually She's actually a friend of the house.
Oh,
so
okay, I see.
first and foremost, I'm just going to tell you that that's not all. She's a friend of the house.
Okay. Okay.
All right, but anyway, yeah, I mean, she still spoke at Friends of Africa Economic Development Summit. I don't know if you remember.
I remember that.
So,
yes.
Yeah, she was a keynote speaker. Anyway, but I believe she's doing a fantastic job in a bad environment, in an environment that is very precarious, to put it succinctly. I think she's trying. And so what I would say to answer that, taking from the last set of comments I just made, is that I'll start from the general. Generally speaking, Nigeria needs a restructuring. That's just the truth. The era of rent seeking, sharing oil from the continental shelf that I have been reading about since I can't even remember. That era is fast moving out. Nigeria needs to restructure, decentralize urgently. I think now is the time that Nigeria needs to begin to talk about this. So that's why I said, generally speaking, that's what I would talk about. The central bank promotes and maintains monetary stability and sound financial system. And the assumption is that this is expected to encourage, long-term planning, infrastructure development, and attract foreign investments. The issue is, are you able to plan long-term in Nigeria? Really?
Okay.
Are we really? So I think from the questions we cite to ourselves, the answers can be answered. Correct. Are we really able to? So that's how I would put it. Okay. The central bank is totally responsible for the promulgation, of various monetary policies so that the system is stabilized. Fiscal policies are formulated by, of course, the other parts, the ministry and so on. But the government itself, the Minister of Finance, the Ministry of Finance, the constituents within, they need to do a firmer job of making sure that stability, long-term planning, investment, investor confidence is entrenched. Without this, I very much doubt that we can actually, reach, as people say, the promised land of the free El Dorado that we've been talking about. Sharing oil rents is no longer on. There just must be a phased planning. Of course, a lot of people look at you and say, "Oh, you speak like this because you are not there."
What do you know? That's what they will say. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because you're not there. What do you know about sharing oil rents? This is what we've been doing forever. But no, actually, the non-oil exports must become the focal point.
Correct.
Is this being incentivized? What incentives are in place for people to actually focus on exportation? There are so many bottlenecks. There are so many situations that when you even dabble into it, you try. You will be hacked down so quickly, you won't even dabble into it again. And I'm sorry. I just said it because I have a lot of...
I want to thank you. I want to really thank you for that. I want to really thank you for that. And thank you for being with us tonight. We're going to continue this challenge and we're going to be bringing you back hopefully at some other time. We're not yet even up to week 10 yet. And we're trying to do this up to week 30. So we're going to be bringing you back to have another session with us. But we thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight. Thank you very much.